the ANC can be convinced to do the right things.
By who?
By the people.
How?
Like what you're doing now. One, by the pressure that the people are giving them to say, we're tired of you. You haven't delivered for us. That pressure works.
People have been saying that, but nothing's changing. It's actually getting worse. They're getting more arrogant.
I don't know.
You don't know if they're getting more arrogant?
No, I don't know if they're getting more arrogant.
The faces I see when I think of the ANC. One day I'm probably gonna have to sit with this guy.
My issue comes, but you see, with Mbalula, I get mixed feelings. I get mixed feelings even for Cyril Ramaphosa. I think Cyril Ramaphosa is become the problem within the ANC in the aspect that he brought the capitalist neoliberal system right at the doorstep and leadership of the ANC.
So he's almost doing DA work, is what you're saying?
Almost doing DA work. But having said that, I have to contradict myself.
Okay.
Which is what I was about to say about Mbalula. So you've got this leader who is a neoliberal, very committed to the white project. And in so trying to be a capitalist, he so helps the white people that created him, so to speak. But at the same time, he's the president that stood up to speak against Zimbabwean sanctions, because if Zimbabwe is not okay, the SADC region is not okay, then we cannot prosper economically as capitalists within the region. So I am forced to also stand with him there. I'm also forced to stand with Fikile Mbalula, who said that, listen, we are not going to brook regime change in Zimbabwe because of economic sanctions that are being used to punish the Zimbabwean people, so that when Zimbabweans go for elections, they elect a puppet government, which is the opposition of Zimbabwe. Fikile Mbalula is the only Secretary General of the ANC that has categorically called the opposition of Zimbabwe a puppet government, and also said that they will not support regime change and the replacement of Zanu-PF with that. Now, if you understand those two positions, they're very opposed from the neoliberal position. ANC, if it stands on the neoliberal position, which is where we've always suspected that it stands with Cyril Ramaphosa, cannot be saying that we don't want Zanu-PF to go, because the neoliberal outlook is that Zanu-PF must go.
But don't you think that's just politicians politicking? And maybe a Cyril and a Fikile, for their handlers or for themselves, have just found a way to benefit from a Zanu-PF Zim and from speaking about sanctions. Maybe they've, let's say even if Cyril went to England to meet with King Charles, he said, listen, my mate, Charles, I'm going to say this thing because it's good on the ground. Abo Rutendo are going to defend me on platforms, but we'll keep plundering. Don't you worry. Don't you think it's just politicians politicking to win your heart? Meanwhile, the reality on the ground is nothing really is changing.
I'll be honest with you. When I started the anti-sanctions movement, 2017, 2018, it was at a time where Zanu-PF was becoming unpalatable and unpopular among the politicians and governments in the SADC region. And the SADC countries were beginning to vocalize it quite openly, that Zanu-PF is becoming a hindrance in the region. So there was a narrative that Zanu-PF is a hindrance in the region because it is misgoverning, it is abusing its people, and we need now to do something to make Zimbabwe what it used to be by removing the Zanu-PF government. And that narrative was being pushed by Botswana, it was beginning to be pushed by South Africa, and it was beginning to be pushed by Zambia when the new president came in. So it works for the neoliberal agenda for Ramaphosa and the Secretary General of the ANC to continue with that narrative because it gets them the support from the West.
Okay.
But they didn't do that. They did not continue with that narrative. In fact, we hear that there was a document that was written that began to say within the ANC that the ANC has got to support other liberation movements. Otherwise, if they don't, the removal of the last and probably the most powerful liberation movement, Zanu-PF in Zimbabwe, will actually be a harbinger to the removal of the ANC in South Africa. And if you look at the ESCOM crisis we have today, ANC have begun to realize that the ESCOM crisis and the when we saw future growth which is an Old Mutual company, refusing to give loans to SOEs in South Africa, to state-owned enterprises in South Africa. And it actually went and campaigned to talk to other members of the ISISA group, which is a group of lenders and a group of global funders
Financial
across.
institutions.
Yes. They went to lobby them not to give money as well to South African state-owned enterprises in 2017. That is something that the ANC has begun to realize and understand, that number one, it started exacerbating the problem in Transnet. It started exacerbating the problem within SAA, and it started exacerbating the problems within Eskom, which is why we're in the crisis that we're in. And so ANC have begun to realize that, my God, these are sanctions. We were put under sanctions by the financial system. Knowing that we've got a very strong state-owned economy, especially in the parastatals and SOEs, and they realized they were being hit there, denied money, denied loans, they recognized that they're being sabotaged for regime change in 2024.
2017 was when Zuma was in power.
Zuma was in power.
And
And when
you speak about
Cyril
an
came in, nothing changed.
I'm trying to figure out, you speak about an Old Mutual whose chairperson was Trevor Manuel,
Yes.
who now says he's no longer ANC.
And remember, Trevor Manuel was at Old Mutual. While that was happening, he also had a relationship with Rothschild. And Rothschild began to have a bigger vocal issue with how South Africa was being run. And they are part and parcel of part of this ASISA and the international ASISA as well.
Trevor Manuel was comfortable with getting Old Mutual to almost go against his ANC with the Zuma in power and lobby other people.
100%.
And then now they're changing their tune because Cyril is in power. That's what it sounds like to me.
They didn't change their tune. That's the problem.
It's still the same
And
today.
because
I know Trevor Manuel was on Cyril's board when they were going to chase money with Otit, or he was on that, whatever that committee thing was of trying to bring in foreign direct investment.
So we were trying to get to reconcile the two opposing positions that Cyril has taken. The one where I don't like him as a neoliberal, and the one where he seems to be standing with Russia, with Zimbabwe, and the ANC changing its position to more aggressively support Zanu-PF, a fellow liberation movement. And I'm trying to reconcile, why would this happen?